the topic is animal testing. And animal testing has been a long time controversial topic because it's practical and moral implications. Although animal testing has dominated the field and has been a go-to method for decades, there are many reasons why the future of animal testing should be reevaluated. With that said, my major claim is the use of animal testing handicaps the medical field from finding alternative methods. My secondary claims are as follows. 1, the continued use of animal testing discourages the creation of innovative and more suitable methods. 2, animal testing is not always effective because humans are genetically different from animals. And 3, focusing on animal testing as a sole creation for medical breakthrough does not allow for other alternatives to be practiced. Keeping these points in mind, I will explain my secondary claims further. Like I said, the continued use of animal testing discourages the creation of more suitable and innovative methods. Current fields rely on these animal tests, but this is not only because the scientific community has relied on this method for decades, but because there is a lack of knowledge and expertise in the cutting edge of non-animal techniques, and this is from the Humane Society. Secondly, animal tests are flawed, and the Humane Society provides appalling statistics of the shortcomings of animal testing. Some 300 million people currently suffer from asthma, yet only 2 types of treatment have become available in the last 50 years. The British Broadcasting Corporation states more than 1,000 potential drugs for stroke have been tested in animals, but only 1 of them have been proved effective in patients. Animal studies fail to predict human outcomes to 50 to 99% of cases. In 2006, Executive Director of People Protecting Animals and Their Habitats in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Kelly Overton in the Baltimore Sun relayed to us, "We have spent billions of dollars to cure cancer in mice, but so far have failed to replicate human cancer in any animal, let alone close in on a cure. All but a very few diseases are species unique, and the only effective way is to discover these cures and create vaccines to the same species cells and tissues and organs. Alternatives, all in all, will gain more useful outcomes." This brings me to my next secondary claim. Animal testing is not always effective because humans are genetically different from animals. Animals are not humans, therefore they hold different reactions and tests than humans would. According to Alistair Curry of the Manchester Evening News in 2012, animal testing is fundamentally flawed because it studies the wrong species. And that is a scientific problem that can never be overcome. Approximately 90% of medicines that pass in animals fail in people. Now let's consider my last secondary claim, which states, focusing on animal testing as a sole creation for medical breakthrough does not always allow alternatives to be practiced. Animal testing has worked when there were no other alternatives in the past, but now in 2014 we have them. According to the British Broadcasting Corporation, nearly 50 different alternative methods and testing strategies have been developed, validated, and accepted by international regulatory authorities. Although alternatives have been identified, it is up to the government, authorities, and scientists in the field to decide to accept the use and to what extent. The alternatives are only as useful as our willingness to begin to put them into practice. Pradva.ru states there is an alternative to brutal testing on laboratory animals. It is possible to perform a lot of experiments with the use of biological models, bacteria, cell cultures, and computer modeling. Unfortunately, all those progressive methods have not been widely spread in the scientific world yet. Galina Chervinskaya, which I don't know if that's how you say it, but anyways, is a well-known Russian virologist and a member of the bioethics committee of the Russian Academy of Sciences. From the same source, believes that 3/4 of animal testing in Russian laboratories can be substituted with cell tests. The National Anti-Vivisection states, continuing, scientists use animal testing more as a matter of tradition than anything at this point. scientists use animals in biological and medical research more as a matter of tradition, not only because animal research has proved particularly successful or better than the other modes of experimentation. Instead, there's a growing awareness of the limitations of animal research and its inability to make reliable predictions about human health. And I got this from the National Anti-Vivisection.com. Concluding, animal testing will only go so far, and the use of alternatives are waiting to be explored and put into practice. With the constant crutch of traditional animal testing, we will never see these alternatives put into production. Thanks.
5 minutes, 42 seconds.
Oh, yeah. It's nice.
All right, Jada, the organizational things at the beginning are pretty solid. The proposition's clear. I think that you do an okay job setting up the secondary points. You signpost the first point pretty clearly. I did think that the transition to the second point was also pretty clear. It wasn't quite as clear as it wasn't quite as clear on the third point, and in fact the phrasing on the third point was a little bit complicated, and so I think it kind of obscures the argument that you're making on that point. You did a good job citing evidence on most of the points. Sometimes it does sound a little bit like you're post-citing, and it gets confusing, like especially on that first quote from the Humane Society, and then there's later evidence that I think kind of fits in the same pattern. Occasionally it sounds like you're paraphrasing as opposed to citing directly, and it's much better to quote directly. That way there's no confusion. I was, you had this one quote that included a 90% statistic in it, and I wasn't sure if that was the advocate or the expert that you were quoting who included that 90%, or if that was a second piece of information. So that's just an example that the data needs to be presented a little more in a slightly tighter way. I do see a little bit of inconsistency in the argument, because you're basically making an argument that says animal testing is preventing people from realizing this potential, and then you turn around and say, and they've discovered 50 tests and they recognize the limitations of the animal testing. So I think there's an inherent contradiction there that the respondent will probably be trying to exploit. All right, thank you.